Congratulations, you vibe coded that app and it's even past your first round of testing. You're ready to deploy it, but before you do that, you gotta build a marketing site. Now, are you gonna build a whole new website from scratch? If so, you're doing too much work. Let's talk about Monorepos. That's right, y'all. Tony with Torian Tech, and this week we're gonna be talking about monorepositories. I know you're just a vibe coder and this might sound really high level, but trust me, you wanna hear this. I'm gonna show you an example breaking down the code, just really simple stuff. Don't worry about it. And then I'm gonna show you that actually in production as one of our Torian Tech products. And lastly, if you stay to the end, I'm gonna show you how I deploy two different websites from one code base. So you guys ready? Stay tuned. All right, y'all ready to talk some tech? So this is FedMatch. We're gonna be using this as our example today. But before we get into that, I think it's really important to show you what a repository even is. This is GitHub, and to explain a repository in simple terms, you can think of it as the folder that the code is ran from, okay? Just plain simple like that. Now, what makes it a mono repository is that every app, mobile or web, it needs its own folder, but those folders can be in the same grouping, meaning they can be ran from the same like master folder, and they don't necessarily have to be two individual folders of their own. All right, you're probably thinking, Tony, why would I ever want two apps in the same folder? I'm lucky the one I got runs every time I needed to. So let me give you a little concrete example here. Back to FedMatch. This is the actual software as a service. After you're done making your baby, it's been running great, you're ready to actually put it in production, you may find yourself thinking, I need a site to actually market this product with. And that's where we call a marketing or product page. If you notice, it's got the same sort of look and feel. Let me put this one in dark mode so you can really see it. It's got the same look and feel as FedMatch because it's sharing the same components. It's sharing the same typography. It's sharing the same images. On the background, it's sharing the same database for when people sign up. It's sharing the same backend functions as well for when people need to pay for things. Long story short, this was done not by making an app with the same functions doubled up. It was by using components within the same monorepo that were shareable. So images that are shared between two different apps, typography, font, and functions and authentication databases that are shared between two different apps, but in the same folder, so you don't have to do it twice. If you don't know what this is by now, this is called Visual Studio Code. If you ever decide to quit using your AI generator editors and stop paying that $25 a month, this is completely free. It's actually got its own AI agents inside of it as well. They have their own limits, but you can pay them like you can pay whoever, I believe. But long story short, what's important here is that this is the look of a repository. As you can see, it's a bunch of folders inside of folders inside of folders. This is the main one, FedMatch. That's the actual name of the folder. Maybe you've seen some of these before. I'll break down everything in the repository in another video. But long story short, what I wanted to show y'all is once we get into the source code here, this is different than you'll see in most other general repositories, because this is how a monorepository is structured. We've got the different apps, we've got the product app, and then we've also got the SaaS app. Product meaning, one second. Sorry. Product meaning the product page, like I showed y'all before, the marketing site, and then the SaaS meaning the actual software as a service. And so they're in different folders, but they share the same hooks. They share the same library, which is our Firebase backend as a service, because you don't want to call that twice. You're going to run into some errors there. And how I'm using this is that our marketing page is used to drive traffic to the site. Now that you've seen how it's set up architecture-wise, let's talk about how to run these two different applications within the same folder. If you've ever run a project on your own before within the code, you're familiar with ngserve or npm run dev, depending on the framework that you're using. We're using React here, and React script npm run dev, what that does is it runs the which is governed by a configuration file. Similar to the angular.json, it's just its own little instruction manual of what we're going to be running and how we're going to be doing it. I'm not the bestest on React, so forgive me if I'm butchering this, but what I do know is that to make this a monorepo from a normal just jumble of folders is when running the Vite, we define a different Vite for our product page and create a different config for that Vite. As you notice here, I've got our product page and we've got its own Vite, which is ran with its own command here. So to show you that in practice, I'll show you npm run dev. It's going to spin up the first one on 880, boom, boom, boom. And then we're going to do npm run dev product. And it's going to spin up a different one on 5174. And so now, if you follow along, you've spun up your very first monorepo. All right. Since we're here, I actually wanted to show you how I deploy these two different apps from the same code base. I think this is important for a lot of y'all because if this is your first time inside of Visual Studio Code, you're probably paying someone $25 a month to deploy this code to your domain for you. So you can totally do it for yourself for free as well if you own your domain. And how I do it is I use scripts as well. Just like before, we've got two different scripts, one for dev, one for product. I've got two different deploy scripts. Like I mentioned before, I use Firebase as my backend as a service. And I've got one script to deploy the actual SaaS and another script to deploy the actual product. How this works is within the CLI, you got this command to run, but it checks which folder you are building at the end, or not at the end, but when you build your different app folders, they go to two different locations. One here in the product dist and the other one in the normal dist. And Firebase is checking these folders when it sends to the FedMatch site and to the FedMatch product site. I'm gonna show you Firebase here in a second so you can kind of see the back end side of it, and maybe it'll click clack a little bit more, and maybe you'll go get you some Firebase. Let's check it out. Cool. So if you've never seen this before, this is Firebase. It's what's known as a backend as a service. They do a lot of the things like domains, hosting, databases. I know all their like product names for them, but like databases, authentication, they do a lot of those things for you in-house. And this is a brand by Google, so that's why I always kind of shout them from the hills. But in our case here, we're worried about the hosting. And for this, which is again completely free, we've got our FedMatch product and we've got our FedMatch normal. That's our software as a service. As you can see, they're both separated. And by doing the two commands, it sends them to the two separate hosting sites. And that is how I deploy two different websites from one code base completely for free from my laptop. You can too. If you got any questions, let me know something. Holler at us at Torian Tech. We'd be happy to do it for you as well. But other than that, sleeves.